A thin veil of mist clings to the ground as if the earth itself is exhaling in fear. Inside Ravensbrück's punishment wing, the air is colder than the winter outside, dense, unmoving, thickened by years of screams that no longer echo. A metal door stands halfway open, trembling on its hinges, as though even the steel is afraid of what waits behind it. Then, a single boot step. Slow, heavy, final. A guard drags a woman down the corridor, her bare feet slipping on the wet concrete. A faint trail of dirt and blood marks every step she takes. She tries to steady her breathing, but the air tastes like rust and damp stone. The ceiling lamp buzzes overhead, flickering hard enough to cast the hallway in stuttering snapshots. The woman's shaking hands, the guard's expressionless face, the shadow of a cell door yawning open like a mouth. They stop at a chamber barely wider than a body. A standing cell. 4 walls. No window. No bench. Just darkness and enough space to exist, but not to live. The guard shoves her forward. Her shoulder slams against the stone. The hinges groan. The door closes an inch at a time, sealing out the light until only a thin sliver remains, then disappears. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. In Ravensbrück, these cells are whispered about in every barrack. Not because of how prisoners die inside them, but because of what the darkness does to the living before death ever arrives. As the Third Reich began to collapse under the combined pressure of the Allied advance, the once unyielding aura of the SS fractured. What had been a symbol of absolute control and ideological fanaticism now moved through Europe like a wounded beast, dangerous, unpredictable, and rapidly losing the territory that had sustained its power. In the frozen forests of the east and the bomb-scarred villages of the west, SS commanders issued desperate, often erratic orders, trying to hold together an empire built on fear. But with every passing week, the front lines shrank, and with them, the illusion of Nazi invincibility. Across retreating columns, morale crumbled. Some SS units attempted to destroy evidence of their crimes, burning files, dismantling camps, silencing witnesses. Others scattered, hoping to blend into regular army ranks or disappear among fleeing civilians. Yet the world had changed. The Allied forces advancing behind them had already begun collecting testimonies, documenting atrocities, and securing sites that would later stand as evidence for tribunals. The SS could run, but the shadow of accountability moved just as fast. In these final chaotic months, cracks within the organization widened. Junior officers questioned the commands of their superiors. Some attempted quiet surrenders, wagering that captivity under the Americans or British offered a faint chance of survival. But for those already known by name, for the camp commandants, the execution squad leaders, the architects of terror, escape was rarely possible. The collapse of the SS was more than a military defeat. It was the unraveling of a system built on brutality, a prelude to the reckoning that would soon follow. They were pulled from barns, forests, basements, and shattered town squares, men who once commanded with the authority of the Reich now standing face to face with the forces that had come to dismantle everything they represented. For many SS officers, first contact with Allied troops was a moment loaded with terror, calculation, and the sudden understanding that the world they knew had ended. Their uniforms were mud-stained, their insignia torn off or hastily concealed, yet nothing could hide what they had been. Not anymore. American patrols approached each capture with caution. Rumors circulated about fanatical last-stand SS units willing to die in ambush. But what soldiers often found instead were exhausted men, some defiant, some trembling, caught between their propaganda-fueled expectations and the reality of Allied discipline. The myth of Allied cruelty dissolved quickly. Prisoners were processed, searched, questioned. Some tried to talk their way out of their pasts. Others refused to speak at all. Behind every initial interrogation, though, lay a growing mountain of evidence. Reports from liberated camps. Survivor testimonies. Documents left behind in command posts. Every new capture was not just another prisoner, it was another thread connecting to a widening tapestry of crimes the Allies were now determined to expose. SS officers who believed they could hide among regular troops discovered, sometimes within minutes, that their names were already known. Their faces already recognized. Their deeds already recorded. This first contact was never the end of their story. It was the beginning of a legal reckoning that would drag their pasts into the light, one question, one file, one witness at a time. What began as scattered captures soon accelerated into a sweeping, methodical hunt. As Allied forces advanced deeper into Germany, the identification of SS officers shifted from routine processing to a coordinated pursuit driven by mounting evidence and a rising urgency for justice. Every liberated camp, every cache of documents, every survivor brought forward added weight to the momentum. The Allies were no longer simply winning a war, they were assembling a case against an entire system of terror. Interrogation centers filled quickly. Some prisoners arrived in guarded silence, aware that their names appeared in seized rosters and command logs. Others attempted bold reinventions, claiming they were cooks, mechanics, clerks, any role that distanced them from the crimes now pouring into the hands of investigators. But lies collapsed fast. Former prisoners identified them. Tattoo numbers matched transport lists. Even the dirt under their fingernails, stained by the fires of destroyed evidence, betrayed their stories. Military police units received new directives: prioritize SS personnel, track escape attempts, secure witnesses, preserve sites of atrocity. The net tightened further with every passing day. Those who had once walked through camps with unchecked power now found themselves surrounded by armed escorts, their past decisions following them like shadows that could no longer be outrun. The atmosphere changed. This was no longer an improvised end-of-war scramble. It was escalation, deliberate, structured, and relentless. For the SS, the walls were closing in. For the Allies, the long march toward justice had shifted from possibility to inevitability. And with every new arrest, the momentum pointed toward a fate many of these men had once believed they would never face. The middle months of 1945 unfolded like a fractured mosaic, overlapping interrogations, conflicting testimonies, frantic escapes, and the slow, grinding machinery of justice trying to make sense of a collapsing empire. In this chaotic middle, nothing was straightforward. SS men told stories that bent in the light. Witnesses contradicted one another. Files surfaced in unexpected places, sometimes intact, sometimes charred. It was a battlefield of information, and every piece mattered. American investigators worked around the clock, sifting through a flood of names, ranks, and affiliations. Some prisoners clung to silence, hoping anonymity would shield them. Others spoke too much, offering rehearsed narratives, half-truths, or attempts to blame dead superiors. But the truth had momentum now. Patterns emerged. Identical stories surfaced from different camps. The same surnames appeared across transport lists, punishment logs, and execution orders. Slowly, order began to rise from the chaos. Still, uncertainty lingered everywhere. Not every accusation was clear. Not every witness could remember perfectly after years of terror. And not every captured man was guilty. Sorting the architects of cruelty from the coerced participants became a moral and logistical labyrinth. Americans found themselves holding trials in makeshift chambers, using translated statements, rushed medical exams, and underslept officers who knew the stakes of every decision they made. For the SS, this period was pure desperation. Some attempted escapes. Some begged for leniency. Others finally confessed, quietly, brokenly, realizing the tide could not be turned back. The chaotic middle was not the climax of justice, but it was its crucible. The messy, volatile space where truth battled confusion, and the future fates of hundreds were shaped in real time. As investigations deepened and the evidence became impossible to escape, the SS entered its final psychological collapse, a breaking point where denial, fear, and fading loyalty collided. This phase was marked by desperate gestures, bold lies, and in rare cases, dramatic last stands by men who still clung to the myth of their own invincibility. They had once commanded with impunity, now they faced a world that no longer bowed to their authority. Some SS officers attempted to orchestrate their own heroic narratives. They claimed they had resisted orders, saved prisoners, sabotaged executions, stories crafted to paint themselves as reluctant participants rather than willing instruments of a brutal regime. Others tried to portray their surrender as an act of courage, insisting that they alone had preserved discipline or prevented chaos in the final days of the Reich. But the facade cracked quickly. Documents disproved them. Witnesses dismantled their claims. Their last stands existed only in the versions of events they tried to sell. Yet there were moments of genuine confrontation. A few officers refused to cooperate, rejecting interrogations entirely, standing in rigid silence as though defiance alone could hold off the tide. Some attempted escape, scaling fences, bribing guards, or disappearing into forests, only to be recaptured, exhausted, and defeated. Others declared loyalty to a dead regime, shouting slogans into empty air, their convictions collapsing under the weight of undeniable evidence. This was the end of the line. The collapse was total, ideologically, emotionally, structurally. Their power was gone. Their defenses stripped away. For the Allies, these final acts were not obstacles but confirmations. The truth was winning, and justice was closing in. The so-called last stands of the SS were not heroic, they were the final echoes of a system already written into history's darkest chapter. The dust settles, and the world feels impossibly still. Ravensbrück's gates stand empty, the barracks silent, yet the echoes of suffering linger like smoke in the frozen air. The punishment cells, once filled with the moans, shuffles, and whispered prayers of countless women, are now hollow. Walls blackened by despair bear witness to the horror that occurred within, speaking louder than any words could. Investigators and liberators move through the camp cautiously, almost reverently. They uncover instruments of cruelty, standing cells too narrow to sit in, starvation cells where the air was thick with death, piles of confiscated belongings, the tiny, personal remnants of lives torn apart. Each object tells a story, every scrap of paper or uniform a testament to human endurance and atrocity. They gather documents, photograph walls scarred with names scratched in desperation, and interview survivors whose voices tremble yet persist in recounting the unspeakable. Ravensbrück's legacy is layered. It is a story of systematic cruelty, of a machinery designed to break women's bodies and spirits. Yet it is also a story of survival, resistance, and the stubborn insistence of humanity in the darkest hours. Prisoners smuggled letters, preserved secret diaries, maintained fragments of culture and solidarity, acts small in scale but enormous in courage. The world now knows. The evidence cannot be erased. Trials follow, sentences are pronounced, and names are etched into history alongside the camps themselves. And yet, one corridor, one cell, one frozen hallway at a time, the memory persists. Ravensbrück is a reminder that cruelty may rise, but resilience, witnessed, remembered, documented, survives. This was one story, one corridor, one punishment cell, but countless others remain hidden in history's shadows. Step forward, witness the next chapter, and see the human spirit endure even amid the deepest darkness.